Have you ever heard of the forgotten prophecies? Those ancient texts, buried under the weight of centuries, spoke of a time when the world would be on the brink of something irreversible. Millennial prophecies, hidden in sacred manuscripts and hidden scrolls, already warned this moment would come. And now, clear signs are emerging in our world. They were ignored. They were called metaphors. But what if all that was literal? If you are afraid of the truth, perhaps this video is not for you, because what we are going to reveal now is beyond common understanding, and it has already begun. Ancient prophets described phenomena that now align with global events documented by scientists. The planet's temperature spiraling out of control, the sky emitting inexplicable sounds, waters rising where they should never have, technology gaining consciousness. These are events that seemed impossible, but they are recorded in disturbing detail in forgotten scriptures that are only now beginning to be studied again. Science, however reluctantly, is beginning to admit something is happening, and it is happening now. Manuscripts like Enoch, which were excluded from the traditional Bible, speak of entities coming from heavenly doors that would one day open. Babylonian prophecies spoke of a time when the truth would be buried under mountains of distraction. And today, with social media, artificial intelligence, and a global system of invisible control, do you really believe you are seeing the world as it is? Or are you just seeing what they want you to see? The scary thing is that it's not just about religious beliefs anymore. Modern astrophysics, through telescopes like the James Webb, has detected signals that defy natural laws. Structures in space that appear constructed, not formed. Sound frequencies that shouldn't exist. Energy, sources that appear and disappear without explanation. None of this is on the front pages of the newspapers. None of this appears in the news. But it is documented. And now, finally, it begins to be revealed. As you watch this video, experiments are being conducted at places like CERN, the particle accelerator, in search of a God particle that, according to ancient records, would open pathways to other realities. It is no coincidence that prophecies speak of portals that would open at the end of time, nor that ancient priests warned of the dangers of touching the invisible. The line between science and spirituality is about to disappear, and the evidence is everywhere. But no one is paying attention, maybe out of fear, maybe out of convenience, or because they're simply not prepared. These signs that are now beginning to emerge are nothing new to anyone who has read the ancient texts carefully. The Dead Sea Scrolls, hidden for centuries in the caves of Qumran, contain disturbing descriptions of a time when darkness would overwhelm the nations and man would be watched even in his most intimate thoughts. Is it a coincidence that today we live in a world where algorithms know more about us than our own families? Where we are constantly watched, tracked, manipulated by systems that pretend to serve us, but which in reality seem to fulfill a much greater hidden plan? The prophecies in the book of Daniel in the Bible speak of knowledge that would multiply rapidly in the end times. And isn't that exactly what we see today? In just a few decades, we have gone from the typewriter to autonomous artificial intelligence, from handwritten letters to instant communication between continents, from blind faith in religion to a new cult of technology. A silent, subtle, but powerful cult, which makes us question whether this evolution was truly natural or whether it was already written by much older hands. In Ezekiel's prophecy, there is a vision of a wheel within a wheel, an unidentified flying object described in detail, which many today believe to be an ancient representation of extraterrestrial technology. What if this is not just theory? What if these records are, in fact, symbolic proof that we are living in a cycle of revelation, where the ancient and the future collide, bringing to light that which has been hidden from humanity for millennia? The connection between these sacred texts secret documents, and the advancement of modern science is not only fascinating, it is eerily accurate. It all seems to converge at this particular moment in history. It is no coincidence that these ancient words align perfectly with the global events we are witnessing. Silent wars fought in the cloud, pandemics altering human behavior, spiritual earthquakes shaking ancient beliefs, and the awakening of a global interest in what lies beyond the visible. There are accounts of ancient cultures describing a time when the veil between the worlds would be torn. And, curiously, this is exactly what we see in the recent discoveries of quantum physics, which is beginning to accept, albeit timidly, the idea of parallel realities and overlapping dimensions. Could this be scientific proof of an ancient prophecy? Are we simply discovering what they have known for millennia? Because the truth is that the deeper we delve into these mysteries, the more they seem to point in a single direction, a truth that is emerging from the shadows. And it is precisely at this point that the signs become impossible to ignore. What once seemed like prophetic symbolism is now taking shape before our eyes, with real, documented evidence confirming the fulfillment of these hidden messages. Silent wars are being fought no longer with swords or bombs, but with data, codes, and disinformation. Governments and corporations are fighting for control of minds, shaping opinions and using algorithms as invisible weapons. This was foreseen. Ancient prophecies spoke of an era where battles would not be seen, but felt in every home, in every thought. Today, we live exactly like that. The unbridled rise of artificial intelligence is also at the heart of these signs. Machines that learn, that improve themselves, that simulate consciousness. Prophets of the past spoke of an image that spoke, that moved, and that forced men to obey. Doesn't that sound exactly like the interfaces that today control our consumption, our leisure, and even our faith? AI is already deciding who gets hired, who gets medical treatment, who gets credit. We are handing over free will to a digital entity, and that's also in the prophecy. Global surveillance has reached levels that even the greatest empires of the past could not have imagined. Satellites track your every move, microphones listen, cameras watch. Your steps are monitored, your routine recorded, your emotions analyzed. The old all-seeing eye has materialized, but now it is not symbolic. It is literal, programmed and connected to networks that know where you are, who you are with, and what you are thinking of buying or hiding. Pandemics, which shake not only the bodies but also the social and spiritual structures of humanity, have also been described with disturbing precision. An invisible breath will bring confusion to the nations, said an ancient Hebrew text recently rediscovered. And that is exactly what happened. An invisible, intangible virus slowed down the planet, isolated people, and instilled fear and forced obedience. Living proof that we are following the prophetic script. And what about extreme weather events? They are increasing at an alarming rate. Floods, droughts, deadly heat, hurricanes where there was once peace. Scripture warned, the heavens will burn like fire, and the earth will shake under men's feet. We are seeing it. Scientists try to justify it with terms like global warming or cyclical changes, but what if it goes deeper? What if it is the earth responding to prophesied imbalance? What if these events are the language of the planet, echoing ancient warnings that we are finally beginning to decipher? Because the more signs emerge, the more everything becomes connected. And when we begin to delve deeper into the sacred texts, we realize that what is happening today has already been described with disturbing precision. We are not talking about mere coincidences or religious metaphors. We are talking about millennia-old predictions that fit like pieces of a dark puzzle into the most recent events of humanity. In the Book of Revelation, for example, there is a passage that says, "And in the end of time, the eyes of all will be on a single image." Now stop and think. At what other moment in history could this be true, if not at this very second, when billions of people around the planet have their eyes fixed on one thing, a screen, the same image that dictates behaviors, that filters truth, that shapes realities, and that imposes narratives? Isaiah's prophecies mention a spirit of confusion that would cover the earth, causing man to lose his sense of direction, stumbling at noonday as if he were blind. And isn't that exactly how many are living today? Confused, not knowing who to trust, what is real, what is manipulated, what has been hidden. This fog of misinformation, this avalanche of conflicting voices, this collective disorientation, it was all already written, and yet we ignore it. In the book of Ezekiel, we find the so-called wheel within a wheel, an object described in such detail that today we think of technology far beyond the time in which it was recorded. And we are not alone in this perception. Scientists, theologians, and researchers have begun to re-examine these texts in a new light, no longer as allegories, but as descriptions of real events, lived or witnessed by our ancestors, which they attempted to record with the words and concepts available at the time. The scriptures of the prophet Joel speak of a time when the sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood, before the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Recent astronomical events, such as total eclipses, consecutive blood moons, and rare planetary alignments, are being recorded with alarming frequency. And even when there are scientific explanations for each of them, the pattern, rhythm, and symbolism seem to follow exactly what these ancient texts warned about. Other documents, such as the Gnostic texts from Nag Hammadi and the apocryphal writings, rejected by religious councils throughout history, also speak of a cycle of revelation that would come when humanity was about to surpass its own limits. They warned of the emergence of entities disguised as light, of systems of control under the guise of freedom, of an era where everything would seem accessible but nothing would truly be known. And maybe, just maybe, we are now living through the very turning point they so feared. With so many signs emerging at the same time, it is no surprise that even science, as skeptical as it has always been, has begun to face the inexplicable. Sudden changes in the Earth's magnetic field, for example, are being recorded more frequently, and they are not just natural fluctuations. Scientists around the world, including those from NASA and the European Space Agency, have been reporting instabilities in the magnetic shield that protects us from cosmic radiation, something that can trigger failures in electrical systems, communication breakdowns, and even affect human behavior. But what few people say is that these same changes were predicted under other names in ancient Mayan and Egyptian prophecies. These civilizations spoke of a shift in the axis of the world, a great imbalance that would precede a new era. Interestingly, many researchers avoid delving into these parallels. They prefer to stick to technical explanations, statistics, and formulas, as if that were enough to contain the truth that insists on emerging. There is an uncomfortable silence behind the scenes in science. When confronted with data that does not fit their models, many choose to ignore, hide, or disbelieve it. But the facts are there: uncontrolled weather patterns, electromagnetic pulses from space, anomalous behavior of the sun, and even subtle changes in perceived time, as if the days were actually getting shorter. The James Webb Telescope itself, considered humanity's most powerful eye on the cosmos, has already captured signals that have no logical explanation. Giant structures between galaxies, regular pulsations coming from the void, and distortions that defy the laws of physics. However, all of this is treated with extreme caution, often pushed into the realm of speculation, as if admitting this evidence would open doors that are too dangerous. But what if science, even without wanting to, is already confirming everything that prophecies have warned about for millennia? What if the data, so objective and cold, is the new divine language that tries to warn us of what is to come? There are also reports of unexplained phenomena occurring simultaneously in different parts of the planet. Strange sounds coming from the sky, metallic noises, flashes of light with no apparent origin. Many of these events are documented by civilians, captured on cell phones, shared on social media, but rarely analyzed with the seriousness they deserve. And when they are labeled as unknown atmospheric events or natural auditory anomalies. However, the constant repetition, the patterns that form, and the places where these phenomena occur, often close to archaeological sites, conflict zones, or military bases, raise questions that few have the courage to face. And it is precisely when science begins to encounter its own limits that other voices gain strength. Voices that have been ignored, ridiculed, or silenced for centuries. Forgotten prophets, isolated mystics, ancient tribes, and lost civilizations have always warned of a time when the veil between the worlds would become thin enough to be passed through. Some cultures call this the Great Awakening. Others describe it as the activation of the portals of revelation. But what they all have in common is the certainty that this moment would be marked by a collapse in the perception of reality. Exactly what we are beginning to experience now. There are theories, more accepted today than ever, that argue that we are not alone on this planet, and perhaps we never were. Beings from other worlds, or perhaps other dimensions, have always been part of our history. Only now, the difference is that there are records, images, captured by satellites, leaked reports from former military personnel, documents declassified by governments that for decades denied everything. They know, they saw, and what was once just a conspiracy now begins to turn into a revelation. Some say that these beings are not just visitors but guardians, observers, or even manipulators of human destiny. Others, even more, daring, believe that they are the same fallen angels described in the apocryphal texts of Enoch. And it is at this point that the spiritual and the extraterrestrial intersect. Ancient texts speak of luminous entities, celestial messengers, beings who descend from the heavens with forbidden wisdom and divine technologies. Could these be spiritual manifestations or interdimensional visitations? The boundary between what we call spirituality and what modern physics describes as parallel universes has never been so close. The Bible, the Quran, the Vedic writings, the Mayan chants, and the Sumerian records share this same central theme. A return, a revelation, a confrontation between light and darkness on a scale that transcends the physical plane. What if the myths about Atlantis, Lemuria, or even the Anunnaki are not just stories? What if they are distorted memories of real interactions between human civilizations and beings from other realms? There are researchers who argue that many megalithic constructions of antiquity were built with the help of technologies that defy our current understanding. Technologies that these beings possessed, and that would have left traces all over the planet. They did not go away. They are here, and there are signs that something is about to reveal itself, as if a key were slowly turning in a lock that separates worlds. What if all of this is true? Not just religious metaphors, not just mystical delusions or conspiracy speculations, but a coded truth, spread over centuries, cloaked in myths, secret records, and spiritual whispers. What if every prophecy, every hidden message, every vanished civilization was desperately trying to warn us of something coming? Maybe the prophecy isn't a prediction. Maybe it's a warning, a code of spiritual emergency that humanity has ignored for too long. We've been so caught up in the speed of now, the illusion of control, the arrogance of technology, that we failed to notice the glaring signs all around us. How many times have you felt that something is wrong, but you can't explain what? As if time were speeding up, as if the world had lost its natural rhythm, as if something, invisible but present, was silently leading us to a point of no return. This has been talked about too. Hebrew and Hindu prophecies warned of a time of inversion, where good would seem evil, where truth would be ridiculed, where leaders walk without a soul, and the masses follow, without question. And now, look around you. Manipulated news, hushed-up scandals, crises that repeat themselves with different faces, but the same rotten essence. The constant feeling that there is something more, something hidden, something that is about to be exposed. But the question that no one wants to ask, and that few have the courage to answer, is, are we really prepared? Are you ready to face a reality where the spiritual merges with the physical, where beings we called gods, angels, or aliens return and demand answers? Are we ready to accept that our history may have been manipulated, rewritten, and that our true role in this universe goes far beyond what was taught in school books? Some say that everything that is happening is just the beginning of a much larger cycle, a cosmic realignment, a spiritual cleansing, a fall before ascension. But few understand the weight of this transition. Imagine, for a moment, that everything you thought was fiction is actually documented in ancient manuscripts, archived in government bunkers, whispered about by reclusive monks, and observed by eyes that are not of this world. Imagine that this alternate reality is already here, just invisible to the eyes of those who do not want to see. Because deep down, the truth has never been hidden. It has always been right in front of us, but shrouded in symbols, metaphors, and enigmas that we are only now beginning to decipher. It is now. Not a decade from now. Not in some distant future where everything still seems abstract. It has begun. It is happening right now, as you watch this video, as millions go about their daily lives unaware that the world they knew is changing at an unprecedented rate. And it is not just change, it is fulfillment. An exact, surgical, almost mathematical fulfillment of prophecies that have long been discredited, hidden, or distorted. We are at the center of something that has been written, spoken, sung, and whispered about by civilizations that knew this day would come. It is the moment of great revelation. Ancient scriptures said that a time would come when man would seek to equal the gods. And now we have artificial intelligences overtaking our decisions, genetic manipulation defying the natural, and a headlong rush to create synthetic life. The Tower of Babel of the 21st century is not made of bricks, but of data, codes, and digital power concentrated in a few hands. And once again, the sky watches as the cycle repeats itself. The revelation that is now being fulfilled goes beyond a simple religious prophecy. She is multidimensional. It is in the Mayan texts that spoke about the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. It is in Jesus' words about false messiahs and times of deception. It is in the visions of John, who described a beast with global power, a system that sees everything, records everything, controls everything. It is in the Book of Enoch, which warned about the return of celestial beings, some on a mission of justice, others in pure manipulation. It is even in science, which now admits that there is something beyond, even without knowing how to name it. What we are witnessing is the awakening of a collective consciousness, driven by forces operating both in this world and beyond. Simultaneous events occur with frightening precision: earthquakes, archaeological revelations, global blackouts, financial collapses, protests against the manipulation of the masses. There is a pattern, and it is ancient. It has been foreseen, and the line between the symbolic and the literal has already been broken. Sumerian records, for example, spoke of a time when the old gods would return to reclaim what they left behind. Hindu culture describes Kali Yuga, the age of darkness, where lies disguise themselves as truth, and truth is silenced as madness. Native Americans speak of purification, of a great spiritual fire that would come to cleanse everything that had deviated from the cosmic order. And these stories, separated by continents and millennia, are now connecting like pieces of the same puzzle. But in the face of all this, an inevitable question begins to echo like a disturbing whisper in the mind of those who awaken. Could the end be just the beginning? Because if all these prophecies, signs, discoveries, and revelations are converging on this exact moment, then perhaps what we are living is not a conclusion, but rather the beginning of a new cycle. A cycle that most are not even aware has already begun. The changes are no longer subtle. They are screaming all around us, in politics, in nature, in spirituality, in science. And yet millions continue to live as if nothing is out of place, as if the world will continue exactly as it always has. But you feel it. You know. Something has changed, and there is no going back. Ancient sacred texts foretold that forbidden knowledge would resurface at the end of time, and that only those with open eyes would be able to understand it. And here we are, trying to piece together the fragments of this great enigma that spans civilizations, religions, and even the barriers of time. Are we living what the ancients called the final revelation? Or is this just the beginning of something much greater, deeper, and more dangerous than any prophecy could have foreseen? If the portals between worlds are opening, if the layers of the unseen are being torn apart, if what was hidden is being revealed, then the next question is not about the past. It is about what comes next. Because when the truth comes out in full, when the veil falls away once and for all, when the world sees what has always been right before its eyes, will you be prepared for what comes next? And perhaps that is precisely why these revelations are coming to light now, not as punishment, but as preparation. Because the real test is not whether or not you believe the prophecies. The real test is, what will you do with what you have just discovered? If this is all real, if the signs are being fulfilled before our eyes, then the time for ignoring is over. The world will never be the same again. The pieces are moving, and only those who are alert, awake, and aware will be able to navigate what comes next with discernment. This is not just a story about ancient mysteries. It is a silent summons, and the clock is now ticking against us. If you've made it this far, it means you're among those who refuse to live in darkness. So, subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss the next revelation, because what's coming has already begun to be fulfilled. Leave your like so this message can reach more people, and comment below. I follow the hidden truth. Only those who seek answers beyond the obvious will understand the weight of these words. And don't stop here. The next video that appears on your screen continues this journey and brings information that can change the way you see reality. Click now and move on, because the truth is just beginning to emerge.